All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. So welcome everybody. Today we'll be focused on a subset of the Deepvue indicators. We'll be doing a few of these webinars covering all the indicators that we've added in that are proprietary to Deepvue. So really excited for today. We're going to cover kind of some of the foundational ones that we've included, but we'll, as I mentioned, get to all of them eventually. Today, I'm going to bring up my notes here. We're going to cover the relative strength line, RMV, stage analysis, technical patterns, as well as the up-down volume ratio indicators. So stay tuned for all of that. But before we get really into the session today, we do want to re-emphasize how you guys can visit the help support area of Deepvue, as well as visit feature requests, submit bugs, all of that. So if you go down here to the bottom left of your screen, this is the help module. Clicking this brings up this module here. If you click this, it brings you to the knowledge base where there's articles as well as videos walking through the majority of the aspects of the platform. And here is where you can report an issue, request a feature, as well as contact us, as well as check the status of any of our servers. You can also navigate to the messages that you have with us over here, as well as get the breakdowns of new features that we've added recently to the platform. And you can also see the roadmap and what we're currently working on bringing into Deepvue. So definitely a really important module, and we want to make sure you guys know where to access the knowledge base, as well as how to report an issue, request a feature, so we can continuously keep making Deepvue better for you guys. So we just want to emphasize that. Let's see if there's any questions related to that, but doesn't look like there is. So today we'll go ahead and dive right in, and we'll start with the relative strength line, since that's definitely foundational in a lot of people's trading systems. So let's go ahead and X this one out that I have currently on my template. And in order to add any indicator to Deepvue, what you want to do is navigate up here to the top bar, click indicators or strategies. This brings up this pop-up here where you can scroll and choose any of the dozens and dozens, likely hundreds of indicators we have available. But in order to find the Deepvue specific ones, go ahead and type in DV. That yields this subset where you can see all the ones that we currently have in the platform. We've been really adding a lot of these recently and enhancing the selection that you have to choose from. And in order to add the relative strength line, what you want to do is click the relative strength line one right here. It's now in your object tree, as you can see over here. So we can go ahead and X this out, and it may mess up your scale. Let me go ahead and uncheck scale price chart only. And that's because currently it's trying to plot the relative strength line ratio and the stock price chart all on the same scale. And this ratio, as you know, the value itself does not necessarily matter. It's more about the trend of that relative strength line, and it's unrelated to the price chart. So we either want to move it to its own scale or move it to a new pane above, which is kind of my preferred solution. But I'm going to go ahead and, well, first let's move it to the new pane. So let's go over to settings. You can click these three dots here, which selects more. And down here, you can go down to move to, and let's go ahead and say a new pane above. So there we go. It's pretty much set up right now. You've got the relative strength line down here. You've got your price chart, your volume, as well as any other indicators that you'd like to add to the platform. So I'm just going to pause here real quick because I know when you first start moving indicators around, it might be a little bit confusing. So let me know if you have any questions, but it doesn't look like there's anything specific. So let's go ahead and dive right into the relative strength line. So first, you can see the value itself is plotted in this line. We've got a moving average, signal moving average here. When we're below that moving average, we change the color of the plotted line to pink. And we've also got relative strength new high highlighted in pink here. And if it's green, it's relative strength line new high as well, or price new high here. And we've also got crossover indicators here in triangles, which signals when we go from a negative value below the signal line to a positive value, which can indicate a trend change, as it did way back here in this period right here. So in order to adjust the settings of any indicator in Deepvue, what you want to do is go up again to the object tree and click the gear icon. First, let's cover inputs. You can calculate the relative strength line versus pretty much anything you want in Deepvue. By default, we've got the SPY, which is the S&P 500 ETF, but it may make sense for your trading style to switch this to the NASDAQ 100 ETF, the Qs, or the IWO, or some other reference point. By default, though, we've got the SPY. You can also change the plot type. You can have it be candlesticks if you'd like to. I personally like to keep it as a line here, and the vertical offset just moves it up and down to make it a little bit more cleaner within your chart setup. You can also adjust the signal line for the moving average that you see in the plot. Maybe longer term position traders might want to change this to the 50-day simple moving average. You can definitely go ahead and do so, but I like to keep it to the 21 EMA. And you've got these check boxes here. Once again, the green dot is a relative strength line new high. A pink dot is a relative strength line new high before price. So on a relative basis, looking at two, local maximums, if the relative strength line is making a new high, while the stock is, for instance, still within its base as it was down here, that's when we plot these pink dots right here. You can also hide the moving average right here, as well as the crossover, and you can also do so in the style tab. So this is where you can really get granular with how your relative strength line will look. You can hide the relative strength line if you just want the area. You can change the color for when it's up, down, above, or below the moving average. You can add or subtract the relative strength line itself, change the color of that as well. You can hide the moving average crossover, the pink dot, the green dot, really tailor it to however you'd like to view this indicator. And you can also adjust the candlesticks if you do wish to. Also, you might notice that below the relative strength line itself, between it and the SMA, we've got the area colored. You can hide that if you would like to. And we've also got some labels here, and you've got some visibility selections as well. So that's pretty much a quick run through of the relative strength line. We did a full relative strength webinar, which really dives deep into how to use this specifically. And Tyler, maybe if you could link that in the chat or link that in Discord later today, that would be fantastic. But that's pretty much it for setting up the RS line. So I'll kind of pause here for questions, and also Tyler, feel free to jump in if there's anything that I forgot to mention or anything you want to emphasize. And you're on mute, Tyler.
Sorry about that. Just one that I answered in the Q&A, but it's worth answering live for everyone's benefit as well, is the moving average that's plotted on there, whatever you set it to, it's not the moving average of the index you're comparing the relative strength line to. It is the moving average of the ratio itself.
Yeah. Nope, definitely important. No, that's good. Let's see if there's anything else that comes through here.
I didn't see anything else.
All right, perfect. So that is one of the indicators we'll cover today. So let's go ahead and X that out. And now we'll go ahead and focus on the RMV. And again, we do have resources kind of focused specifically on this indicator. I recorded a tutorial, but we'll cover the general setup as well as how to read it and adjust it here today. So you go ahead and add it the same exact way as you would with the relative strength line, and you can see it plotted down here. So let's talk through what this indicator is, because it might not be as well known as the relative strength line. What this plots is a value between a range of 100 to 0 that gives a measure of the relative volatility of the price action compared to the recent period. So what this means is if this value, if RMV is close to 0, it is the tightest the stock has been within that period. And if it is at 100, it is the most expanded, the price action is wider, it's the most volatile it's been over that period. Excuse me. So to say that one more time, basically, the tighter the price action, the closer this indicator will be to 0. The more expanded price action is, the more volatile the stock is at that instant, the closer to 100 that this indicator will be. So you can see on this gap up with Nvidia, price action was expanding relative to what was normally happening, and we get a value of 100. Then it tightens up a little bit, gets closer to 100. Here it gets very tight within a range, and we see it decline and get basically under 10, which is pretty darn tight. So I'll answer any questions you guys have about this, but I'll keep going until I see a few come through. The options for this indicator are that you can change the lookback periods. So at the moment, the default is a 15-bar lookback period to compare the volatility. So it'll be comparing the current volatility to the past 15 days and then adjusting it accordingly. Is it really tight? Is it close to zero? Or is it really wide and loose, and move that to 100? But you can definitely change this if you'd like to expand the lookback period. Maybe position traders would like to expand this to 50, 100. I've found personally that for growth stocks, a range from 15 to 25 is pretty darn good. And 15 is pretty much a very solid choice. After an earnings gap, any kind of tightening might artificially look tighter in the RMV. So that's something to be aware of because it's been very volatile and then it's just getting back to normal. But when it's just kind of normal movements and then really tightens up in a range, that's when RMV going to zero is really significant. So getting into the style here, you can adjust the plot from a line. I know some people like a histogram. I've seen, I think Rye uses columns. I personally like the line, and I do change the thickness a little bit from the default. I think by default it's like this. I change it to this just so I can see it a little bit more clearer, because I like seeing, even if it's declining, I like seeing that decline pretty clearly, because that suggests that there is some tightening going on, even if it's not super tight just yet. And of course, you can adjust the opacity, the colors, the thickness, just like anything you can within the chart settings of Deepvue. We also have a few lines that you can adjust their levels. By default, they've got those values, but I've adjusted them so the highest level is around 30. That's kind of a bare minimum of tightness. 15 is getting pretty darn tight, and then 7.5 is my last line here. Anything below that means it's getting really tight within this range. If I zoom in, you can see it was very tight for these 3 days, and we got to 100 and then stayed, under 2 even. So that's kind of how I've got my 3 horizontal lines set. And you can also adjust the area between them just to highlight it further. So that's pretty much it for RMV. I'll pause here again. I do want to emphasize that this will be a screenable value, which I think is going to be awesome, just because you'll be able to literally screen for areas just like this. If you screen for RMV less than 10, you'll come up with a list of stocks that, relative to recent price action, have RMV that is very, very tight. Maybe some people will also like to scan for the other end of the spectrum, RMV over 90 or something, and look for those price expansion moves like an earnings gap or significant breakout, something like that. But personally, I'll be focused more on scanning for tight action, because before that you couldn't really scan for VCPs. So I'm really looking forward to this. John asks, are there stand stages in your RMV pane? No, we'll get to the stage analysis indicator in just a second. These areas are highlighting just different levels of RMV. This is only focused on RMV. I set my highest level around 30. That's getting reasonably tight. Then the second area is getting pretty darn tight. And then anything under 7.5 is very, very tight. So actually, I answered Brad questions as well. Awesome. Mike asked, can we scan against one of our own watch lists? Not yet, but that's a future iteration that we will be doing. I know that that's been pretty highly requested. Perfect. Yeah, John, great. So that is RMV. I know we're going through pretty quickly, but please let me know if you have any questions. Tyler here, as well as also answering questions in the chat. But the goal of today is kind of get you guys oriented with these different indicators, the basics of setting them up, and a little bit about how to use them as well. So the RMV, I think, is a very useful, and this is only found in Deepvue. All right, so let's go ahead and move on. Or Tyler, anything that you want to reemphasize with RMV or any questions that you've seen a lot of people have with this?
No, I mean it's fairly new. I think we've had it in the platform for just a couple of weeks now. I do like the fact that it's super customizable. I've got mine set up sort of completely different than how you use it. I've been flip flopping between the line and column setup just to see what works best for me. And then sort of that upper zone, I have expanded actually from I think 30 all the way to 100, and I color it red so that I know if the RMV is in that zone. It's, the price action is probably a little bit too wide and loose for what I like. So I just, gives you a really quick glance at, that to tell me that the stock is a little bit more volatile than I would like to see. So I like that it's super customizable in that way.
Yeah, awesome. And once it's a screenable criteria, one of my favorite screens will be RMV less than 20, and then the stock within a few percent of the 21 EMA. That's what I'm really looking forward to creating with that. So, all right, that is the RMV. So we're moving through these pretty nicely at a good clip here. So next up, let's go ahead and talk the technical indicators or technical patterns, sorry, indicators. So let's go ahead and add that. Let's search DV. And let's go ahead and click DV technical patterns. So by default, you can see it's pretty much highlighting every bar, and that's because there's a lot of stuff turned on at the moment. But let's go ahead and dive into the settings and talk through everything here. So what this indicator is, it's basically an amalgamation of a lot of different shorter term patterns that are significant for growth momentum style trading. They're kind of shorter term entry tactics that that many traders use. So let's go ahead and walk through each of them. I'll kind of discuss briefly each of the different criteria and kind of how you can use them if you would like to. So first, the power trend developed by Mike Webster, basically looking for a stock within a very strong trend. That's what's being highlighted right now. Nvidia has been in a strong trend for quite some time. You can see it turned on just about here. There's some different criteria regarding the moving averages, price action that turn on the power trend, but simply this being activated suggests the stock is in a really nice, strong trend above moving averages. You can see it ceased to be active down here as it broke below the 50 in 21 and is not active again just yet. So this is very useful for identifying those strong, sustained trends. And for any of these, you can change how they are plotted. So you can change if they're highlighted above the bar, below the bar, top, bottom, absolute, and also the different symbol that pops up here, and of course the color as well as the opacity. All right, so that is the power trend up here. I forgot to mention on a weekly basis, you can highlight the 3 weeks tight pattern, which is looking for 3 weeks of tight closes. Definitely another sign of tightness that is very nice to highlight. And you can adjust how that is plotted as well. Moving on to ants, this is from David Ryan, and I don't have an example offhand of a recent stock that has shown this, but basically this is activated when 12 out of the last 15 bars have been up, and it's just looking for a pretty strong power move, often after a base breakout, and just looking for a really strong trend that can signal that strength, and that's what the ants indicator signifies. I think it's also called the MVP setup that some people refer to it as. And again, you can adjust any of the indicators as well as where that shows up. The OOPS reversal is activated. Let's go ahead and bring up Airbnb, bring up that chart, and let's go ahead and not sure why it's not turning on. Tyler, did you see anything I'm doing wrong here? The visibility maybe? Oh, here we go. So it's not highlighted there. So you got to make sure you can either turn them on in the inputs or the style. And you want to make sure, we'll go ahead and turn all these on just so when we click on over here, it's also highlighted. So there we go. You can see the OOPS reversal. We've got, we can either do above the bar or below the bar. And an OOPS reversal is when we gap down below the prior day's low and we move back through that low and close above it. So this will activate whenever there's an OOPS reversal. You can see there's one here on this day. One also here, a subtle one here that closed pretty weakly, but this is another short-term entry tactic that a lot of people use. Yeah, I see some feedback from John. A definition area would be helpful with these indicators, 100%. Yeah, something like what we've got with the filters, Tyler. I think that'd be very helpful. All right, so let's talk about the kicker candle. Let's see if there's any here recently. Let's make sure it's turned on. Well, a kicker candle is basically when we've got an expectation that the stock is going lower, we get a poor closing range the day before, and then we gap up strongly and gap above that move, and that's what a kicker candle is. And once again, another short-term entry tactic, expectation breaker that is pretty powerful. Upside reversal, you can see a few highlighted here is when we've got a low below the prior day's low and then a strong close with a strong DCR move. And again, it's another short-term kind of momentum move that can be pretty powerful as well. You can see one's highlighted here as well as here and this one as well. Outside bullish is basically when we take out the low and then close above the high. You can see an example here. And outside bearish is the opposite. Let's bring up the QQQ. This one has had, let's turn both the outside bullish and outside bearish on. So you can see a downside reversal that turned into an outside bearish right here. And let's see if there's an example of an outside bullish. Looks like one right here. And I believe you had one right there as well. So those two, just again, short-term patterns that are great to highlight as well. Power of three is when the moving averages are converged together and we break above those. That's another powerful signal, very similar to the launch pad setup. A slingshot is when we break above the 4 EMA of highs. You can see an example right here. It's highlighted with this cross where we consolidated for 4 days and then burst through that. If you drew a 4 EMA of highs here, you would see we closed above that on this candle. Open equals high is when we've got an open basically right at the high, and that basically equals the high for the day as well. So the open and the high are the same value. And similarly, we've got the open equals low. This suggests momentum to the upside. This suggests momentum to the downside. Inside day, likely all you guys are familiar with this one. Just highlights when the entire day's range is contained within the previous bar's candle. And we've also got an RMV variation here where you can basically select the lookback period and highlight an RMV input, let's say less than 10. And then this will highlight anytime the stock is consolidating. So let's bring up CEIX. And you can see all these green dots. This is when we're tightening over here. Let's bring up the RMV as well. So you can see that whenever this gets less than that value, we highlight it over in the chart as well with these dots. So if you prefer to visualize RMV on the chart itself under the candles, you can go ahead and use the technical patterns to do that. So I know I ran through those pretty quickly, but I'll pause here for any questions. And Tyler, anything that you want to emphasize or any questions that you think would be good to bring up for the whole group?
Just that I've answered it twice, I think, so far. Just we are working on the tutorial, the video tutorial, and the associated write-up for the knowledge base on all of these new indicators. We've put out quite a few in the last few weeks. So we are working on getting those recorded. I think actually Richard was recording a tutorial right before this webinar, and then the accompanying write-ups will be done soon. And then for this technical pattern one, we are adding more to it. So if you don't see a specific technical pattern that you use, check back for this indicator frequently, because we will be adding more to it.
Yep, perfect. And seems like there's a lot of positive response about this, which is great. And there's a question about RMV. Tyler, maybe you could drop the link to the knowledge base article about RMV, because I go through a few examples in there and kind of walk through how I use it. So definitely a useful indicator, and glad you guys are liking the technical patterns. Definitely a lot of useful entry tactics in here that I know a lot of top traders use specifically. So Let's go ahead and move on, and let's now touch on the stage analysis indicator. Let's bring back Nvidia, and let's type in again DV and select stage analysis. So by default, it plots on the chart itself. You can see where we transition from stage 3, stage 4, back to stage 2. I personally prefer to plot it above the chart. So let's move it to a new pane above. But obviously, based on your personal preference, if you'd like it over the chart, you can definitely do that. I know a lot of people run the relative strength line here as well. So you've got both those indicators in tandem right there. But let's specifically talk about this indicator here. So basically, this is based on our conversations with Stan Weinstein himself and how he describes technically the different stages. Green is a stage 2. This is developing stage 2. Red is stage 4. Stage 3 is in yellow. And as it moves through the different stages, you'll see it's reflected in these colors itself. You can see when we broke below the 50-day moving average shortly here, we did in the short term transition back to a stage 3 or stage 3A, the beginning stage. And like the RMV, this is actually already screenable. So you can search in your indicators and use the stages data point. That's what it's called, stages. And you can also plot this in your data table. I'll actually show that right here. Where do I have that here? Yeah, so Stan Weinstein stages, it's currently in 3A. We're below the 50-day moving average. So you can see that granularity as well. And this is screenable. So you can look for all stocks in stage 2, all stocks in stage 2A, just developing, all that. And this works on the weekly chart as well. And you can see that, we were in stage 4. Then we start transitioning to stage 1, which is this gray color, stage 2 shortly, then back to a stage 4 briefly. And then we move into a stage 1, stage 2A, and then a strong stage 2 for the majority of this year. So definitely very useful, especially if you use the stage analysis methodology, and it's a great visual indicator of trend. If you're focusing on the long side, avoid these stage 4s and focus on these stage 2s. So I'll pause here for any questions about this. This will change in real time based on the price action. And again, it's completely screenable. Tyler, any questions that you've seen a lot about the stage analysis indicator?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward. I think the green, red, yellow color scheme is pretty intuitive. Like a lot of other folks, I do put it in its own pane alongside my RS line on the weekly chart. That's just personal preference, but I have seen lots of folks using it as the sort of entire background of their main chart area. You can, under the settings, turn down the opacity of that. So if you do want it on your main chart area but have it real faint, you can turn that down so it's the color highlight is a lot more subtle.
Yeah, and if you'd like to change the colors, you can adjust that here. And again, this is kind of the color coded scale. Stage 1A, very faint. Stage 1 gray. Stage 2A faint green. Stage 2 solid green, and you can see that same kind of color scheme show up here as well. So and you can adjust the visibility, all that. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it for stage analysis. Again, we've done a webinar on this specifically, so we'll link that in Discord later on as well. So let's go ahead and X out that one and cover one of the most recently added ones, which is the up-down volume ratio, which is pretty cool. So let's type in DV, up-down volume ratio, and there it is. So let's go ahead and even hide my volume. Let's bring this up here. So let's break down this indicator. So first, we've got two signal lines here, 2 and 1. And these basically highlight, well, first taking a step back, the up-down volume ratio basically looks at a look-back period and adds up all the volume on up days, all the volume on down days, and divides those. And it forms a ratio, which is the up-down volume ratio, very aptly named. And if the up volume over that period is higher than the down volume, this indicator will be above 1. If it's above 2, then the up volume is significantly higher than the down volume. And you can see that during this period, Nvidia did get that here. So it's very useful to judge accumulation as well as demand. So back here when the stock was in stage one, you can see very early on here, we cross above the 1 level, even as the base is still developing. And really since this point in early November, we've been positive. We did dip negative just very briefly here, but we pretty much turned positive at this point very early on in the move on Nvidia, which suggests that there's accumulation going during this period where down days aren't happening on huge volume. Let's actually bring back my volume just so you guys can take a look at that. Or up volume is outpacing the down volume. And you can see that again, this is increasing as the trend continues to strengthen, and we even get back above the 2 level a few times here. Still pretty early on in the move. This is around the 240s, 230s, and we're currently way up here forming another base where we've actually crossed below the level. So potentially the trend is weakening here. So this can provide kind of an early indication of accumulation and distribution, and is a pretty helpful gauge of that level. So Tyler, anything you want to double down on when it comes to up down volume ratio? I think it's definitely something I'll be looking at more of, especially when I'm analyzing a stock within a base and it's potentially getting closer to a breakout, forming some tight areas. I'll try to see what the up down volume ratio is doing. Is it above 1? Is it close to 1.5, 2? That would kind of add to my confidence that a breakout might work from that base.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it just adds an extra layer of confidence or conviction in what you're seeing in the actual volume patterns.
Yep. And there's an idea, can we add a third color for when it's above 2.0? I think that's definitely an interesting suggestion. So we'll go ahead and write that down for a future iteration. Yeah, definitely, because this is very significant here. And yeah, I think that's great.
Yeah, that's a nice
Great
idea.
thought. Christopher. Okay. We'll go to general questions in just a second here. There's a question, can the up-down volume ratio be added to Deepvue enhanced volume to show the current up-down volume ratio? So I assume you kind of want to plot the volume here, and then in this corner have kind of the value here. I think, again, that's a really good suggestion that we can write down and look to add in future updates. So thank you for that. John asked, can we run RMV and up-down volume in the same pane? Yes, you can. So let's go ahead and type in RMV. And right now they're in separate panes, but if we click these 3 dots, we can move to existing pane above, and it's a little bit crazy in here. I don't think would run these in the same pane. I think, for my setup, I think I'd go ahead and move to a new pane above and kind of hide this, and then when I'd like to refer to it, I'd pop it open. That's kind of how I would personally run this. Yeah, I agree. Separate panes looks a little bit better. All right. The volume indicator.
It was just a follow-up to adding the up-down volume ratio
To the normal
top
one.
of the normal volume. Yeah, so that it shows up in the same pane.
Yeah, I mean, you could set that up here, but would you like the value itself or would you like the line, I guess, is the question I have. But yeah, we'll take note of that, just the value. Okay. Yeah, we'll think of adding those features in future iterations for sure. So perfect. Yeah, so those are pretty much the indicators that we want to run through today. We'll see what we'll do the next session. We might flip back to charting for a session, then come back to indicators because there's a lot to cover here. But hopefully this was helpful in terms of getting guys used to kind of the key indicators that we've added and that you have accessible to here in Deepvue.